everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cafecito. I'm your host, Christiana. You all know the Cafecito by now, but if not, the Cafecito is about everyday people doing extraordinary things. And as you all always know, I always say today is no different. Every time we come, we want to bring you guests who are doing extraordinary things in their lane to showcase that we don't have to be on the main stage, the big stage, to be making impact in our communities. We can make it at the level that we are at right now. And it's really nice to be able to jump in and see how people are doing it while they're on their journey. And then when they hit it big, because you know they're already big right now. But when they really hit big with all of y'all, you can look back and see that process, and we think it's important. So thank you all for joining. And we also want to give a shout out to We The Plug, our sponsor. It's an online platform that works with Pan-African and Latinx communities who are looking to move from ideation stage all the way to seed round A funding, as well as working with the business community and investors. So if you want to learn more about what we do, please check us out on our website at WeThePlug, THA, not THE.com. A mouthful. All right, so I'm excited to bring to you all Abe. Abe is amazing. He's going to tell who he is in a little bit. And I just am excited because when he and I met, the way we met, it was one of those things where you're just taking advantage of COVID, right? Like we're stuck in our little cubbies, right? And it's like, we're not stopping that, not allowing that to stop us from connecting. So Abe, tell the people who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Christiana. Excited to be chatting with you today, and excited about what you're building in this series. And so, I'm currently a grad student at the University of Michigan. So I'm doing a dual master's degree with an MBA with the business school, and then a master's of sustainability with the School of Environment and Sustainability. So I was born in Tijuana. I grew up mostly in San Diego, down in Chula Vista. I studied civil engineering in Irvine, and then I lived for 5 years in Kansas City working in an engineering role. And then I realized that I wanted to make a pivot in my career, and so came to school back in 2018. And so heading into really just next semester is my last semester, so I'll be graduating soon. Just kind of excited and still trying to figure out what that next step is, but have some ideas and really interested about the clean energy space. And so exploring a little bit more of that. I just wanted to kind of keep it high level, but happy to talk more about any which way we want to take it.
So first of all, I want you all to pause with me because I'm pretty sure you are in grad school right now, but the focus of it is very intense while you're looking at clean energy and how you're going to maneuver in that space, whether you're going to launch your own business or build in that space with pre-existing businesses. I mean, that's a lot. But the other thing that stood out to me that you shared is that you grew up in Tijuana and then moved to San Diego, and now you're in Michigan, but was in Kansas. Are you in Kansas right now? Was in Michigan? Which way?
I'm in Michigan now.
Michigan was in Kansas.
I was in Kansas before, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot. Y'all agree with me? That's a lot, right? So tell us a little bit about how did you get here? I mean, you were growing up in Tijuana, and share a little bit about what growing up in Tijuana was like.
So my dad is from Tijuana, but my mom came to Tijuana to do residency. She studied medicine in Guadalajara. And so anyways, fast forward, I was born in Tijuana, so were my two brothers, and we lived there till I was about 7 or 8, and then moved over. So lived in San Isidro first, and then, but spent most of my time growing up in Chula Vista, the Rancho del Rey, close to East Lake area. And then, so it was just always very, interesting. My mom has mostly always still worked in Tijuana. So even when we were living in San Diego, she would cross, I would say daily, if not at least, every other day or just a lot constantly. So that's just been interesting. And then, like I mentioned, I went to school at Irvine, and spent there like 5 years. And when I was graduating, I walked the stage of the day of my graduation, and then I had an interview in Kansas City like the week after. So it was just kind of interesting times. Um, Long story short, yeah, went to the interview. It went well. Had the offer. I was a little scared to make the big move out to Kansas City, but it was a great company. It was also, an opportunity that I had in front of myself, and did not really, I was still in the applying, but it was just an opportunity I felt like I needed to take. And so made the move, and then ended up spending 5 years there, and then have lived in Michigan. So yeah, I definitely have lived throughout the country. I would say one big thing that's kind of stood out to me, is just, I love how diverse, San Diego and that border area is. But I've also been exposed to different levels of diversity, having moved and lived in other places of the US. Um, and when I've been back in San Diego, now that I've been in grad school, I've actually had two separate at different times, who happen to be visiting San Diego, and take them down to Tijuana to eat tacos as well. And so got to show them a little bit of what,
Yeah.
living down in San Diego's like.
What I really appreciate about what you were saying right there is how you stepped outside of your comfort zone. And I think
Hmm.
oftentimes, speaking from, I grew up in LA, and when my parents decided to move us to Arizona, it was like the end of the world for all, because it was like, oh my God, what we're gonna leave. I mean, it's your community, it's everything you know, and then to pick up and move is far from the family. It can be daunting, and you did it with intentionality. And I, I'm just marveling at how you were able to continue, grow, and thrive. And I mean, being Latino and growing up in San Diego, obviously it's a huge Latino community here.
Yeah.
And so, you had that comfort. You could speak your language easily with anyone because there's so many
Hmm.
opportunities to do that. But as you're moving away from that, how does that impact you, and how do you navigate through that as, you're moving into these communities that are diverse for you, right? It's definitely diverse for you
Hmm.
in many ways, as well as the environment. And so, how did you navigate through that to stay connected with your roots and also embrace this new norm?
Yeah. Um, I mean, definitely, I would say that the biggest first shift was going from to Kansas City. And one of the first people that I met at the job, my friend Will, he was also working in the same department, also an engineer. He had studied at the University of Missouri, so he was local, but he's Nigerian American, and we just easily could. I think it was a little bit of music and just similar taste in music, and that made it easier, just kind of having someone else that I felt like I could, we had things in common. At
Yeah.
the same time, it was also experience, just learning from him, and his own experience growing up,
Yeah.
and vice versa. I definitely feel, you spoke about the like how much you hear Spanish being in San Diego, and it was either at the end of my first or second week. There was like, I started in the summer, so there
Okay.
was a lot of interns still around,
Yeah.
and there was a lunch and learn session, and I sat next to this guy whose back said Jesus Sanchez, and I was like, oh, finally someone else that I can relate to, and I just started talking to him, and he was, at the time, he was an intern, and that's the first time that I spoke in Spanish to someone, being in Kansas City, and it's memorable because of that, because you don't come across, like, being so used to, that was always accessible. Uh, it's obviously when I would speak with my parents on the phone, it was in
Sure.
Spanish, but it's different when you can relate to someone else. Also, one of the janitors who would like clean the break room area, like I would speak to him in Spanish. But there were far and few in between instances, and it always was just a little bit of like that extra energy, that extra push, that
Yes,
little
yes.
uplifting of, and being there, I slowly started meeting more people, and that guy Jesus connected me with another group of like Spanish speakers who were from all of like Latin America,
Mm.
and you slowly start, you look out for each other, right? And
Yeah,
that's
oh
one thing
yeah,
that
oh yeah.
that's one thing I've learned as I move in these new spaces, whether it's here at the University of Michigan, when I was in Kansas City, you're constantly looking out for like one another, and hey, have you heard of this group? Or let me introduce you to these other people. So I got connected with, they had it was called like Young Latino Professionals group in Kansas City. So then I slowly started meeting more people outside of my company. But yeah, it's definitely a big change.
Yeah, and you know what? This is actually exactly what I want to go into next, segue into next is you you know, we talk a lot about representation and how important it is to connect with others like you. It's beautiful when you're able to do that with other cultures and ethnicities. That's the great design, right? That's the
Mhm.
golden goose. In that, it is still a need laying there to have that connection with your own ethnicity, your own culture. And that's part of the evangelism that Luis and I will created We the Plug had in mind. He's Afro Latino. And one of the things that we saw when living here in San Diego in the startup space specifically was that there was no one that looked and sounded like us
Mhm.
across the board. We were in pockets here and there, or we'd show up and we'd be the only ones. And so we just thought, wow, how do we get more of us in these spaces? How do we bridge that gap between the two worlds? And to, you know, there again, we were in that space, but we needed to know how to find each other. And that's what you're talking about. And I think it's a real life thing that it's important for us to acknowledge and celebrate that when we do it, we encourage each other to move out of our comfort zones. And in that same mindset is how do we then go about creating communities where there is a lack in that space? And so for you, you found that space slowly but surely, which sometimes happens. And as we're thinking about the tech space, right, and in the environmental space that you're
Mhm.
operating in as well, how do you see opportunities for those that are from the Latino community, especially because that's where I want to really focus a lot of our conversations today, because it's important for me to show more Latino males and females in these spaces doing extraordinary things so that it's like, oh, Abe went to Michigan. Oh, let me
Mhm.
message Abe and he can give me, oh, Abe lived in, you know, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
eliminate that disconnect. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's slowly just building up, right?
Mhm.
So speaking about going to Michigan, when I was looking at schools first,
Yeah,
I used LinkedIn, went to I knew Michigan had a great program that not just a business school, but also they had this focus on environmental and
yeah,
sustainability. So when I went to the school website, I noticed that they're like, "Oh, one of your connections goes here," and it turned out that it was someone I had gone to UC Irvine with. We had been he was two like about older than me,
okay.
and so when I was a freshman at Irvine, he was like a junior, I believe. But we knew each other through the Latino Business Student Association in
Mm,
Irvine, and that's how we hadn't really like stayed in touch, but we were still LinkedIn connected. And so as soon as I reached out, I was like, "Hey, Fernando, I see that you're studying at Michigan. I'm starting to look at business school as an option. And I'm really good. Like, would love to hop on the phone and talk to you about your experience. And so, yeah, he was super helpful and giving with his time, and just kind of, well, first just talk to me about the MBA process, and just his experience being here in Michigan. And one of my questions I remember was, how are you dealing with the cold? And so, everything from talking about academics to just what it was like to live in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And it was helpful. And at the end of the day, he then connected me with others who were more related to what I wanted to do and study. And so it's all about having, yeah, just having people there who are
Yes.
represented, to be able to just speak to them, right? And so we've been making more of an effort in this dual degree program that I'm in, that's like the business and sustainability, um, to have more representations when they have student panels. So I've been participating on student panels, things
Good.
of that nature. And then we created like a group meet for some prospective students that are, um, you know, quote unquote, like underrepresented, or and quote unquote, because I feel like sometimes underrepresented, it makes it seem like it's on us, but it's, we just haven't been giving the opportunity. Like, we want to be there. And so, um, we're trying to, we hopefully would love to get to a point where we can change that
Yeah.
narrative of like
Yes.
not being underrepresented, and
Yes.
having more parity. And so, um, yeah, I feel like I'm going all over the place, but it
No.
just comes down to these little connections. And
Yeah.
slowly, like you mentioned in your question, if next time you come across someone who is thinking about, maybe even if it's not Michigan, just the process of business school, hopefully now you can think of me, and hey, let me connect you with someone who went to that thought process, even if it's not Michigan. You're thinking about business school, and they can speak to that experience.
That's exactly the reason why I wanted to have you on here, because when we're thinking about how we're going to change the narrative for how we show up in all these different spaces, I'm hyper focusing on the startup space, but I'm also looking at all those other areas where you don't normally see a lot of brown and black faces in that space. But it's not, to your point, necessarily because we're not there, we're not here. It's just that we may not be invited. And so we're saying now, oh no, we're here, we want to be invited, and
Mhm.
you being on panels. So now it's like, okay, here is someone, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm Abe, and the sugar on my cake or the icing on my cake is that I happen to be Latino, male, starting and all these other things.
Mhm.
And I'm showing up with all of this rich skills and talent and gifts to present to this space. And I'm qualified to be here. No one's saying that, we're looking for opportunities for people who are not qualified. We're looking for opportunities for people who are qualified. All of us, have that there. So one of the things I wanted to have you highlight is talk about this environmental space that you're looking at moving into, because again, when the first thing I think of when I think of environment, I think of just that, the amount of smog that's in our air. I think about certain communities that may have more poor air quality than others, and the reasonings behind that, social economics, ethnicity, all those different pieces. So can you share a little bit about what's this environmental thing? Talk about what that is and what you're looking to do in that space, and why does it matter?
Yeah, um, great question. Definitely will try to hit on every point, because I feel like I can talk about,
I know you had me
hours
all
about
riled
this.
up the other day.
Um, so when I was actually working as an engineer in Kansas City, the role it was a transmission engineer. So we would design like the power lines. So that was like kind of like the big power lines that you see, maybe more like
That's over our head. Yeah.
yeah, but more of the ones that maybe are going like through the desert, like the larger ones. So not the ones that go into your house. Um, so that was my first exposure into the energy industry. And so the more I continued to work there, I realized I started to learn, a lot of like environmental injustice or environmental, some people say racism. So a lot of the polluting power plants usually tend to be located in communities of color, like lower income communities. And these are releasing just a lot of pollutants into the air. So people just don't know about it. And one of the goals of, yeah, let's switch to solar and wind and cleaner sources, because it's good for the planet. But at the end of the day, it's also good for the communities. And they are very much negatively impacted by a lot of that. Another component is there there was an NPR article that said about a third of U.S. households sometimes struggle to pay their energy bills, and
A
that can
third?
mean about a third of high school, and I would say a majority of those end up being predominantly like Black and Brown communities as
Yep.
well. And energy it impacts your heating, your fridge, like keeping your food cold and safe, and it impacts so many other parts of your day-to-day lives, that you know it's a burden like that you just can't get rid of, right? Um, so in just I kind of learned how, and then at a more global level, you have, I believe, about a million or so people who don't have reliable access to energy, and a lot of them is focused, or I think Africa and then Southeast Asia are kind of like the two more main areas. So across the board, from like your local community level all the way to like global scale, there's just inequities when it comes to energy all over the place, right? Um, so for me, I just felt that, okay, I'm working in this energy space, but I want to be somewhere where I feel like it's more impactful, more kind of closer to the end customer, or working on something, um, not in big, large scale projects that take years, but they're important, but they just take such a long time. I felt like I wanted to move somewhere, and part of me wanting to do a business degree was to be, at the end of the day, I think business decisions are the ones that drive, uh, like projects and change, right? And it's these business managers. And so I wanted a seat at the table. I wanted to have influence into how things are changing. So, um, yeah, I think along those lines, I was in a podcast, I was listening to about 2 weeks ago, and the person they were, he's a Black founder of this Black Power, and I think he was maybe quoting something else he had heard, but it just stuck with me. He said uh, something along the lines of like the clean tech technology needs to realize that they're going to need um, the support and engagement of like Black and Brown communities
Mm-hmm.
and Black and Brown professionals to not only changes in the communities where they live, but also we need like the culture so we can sell like these products, these clean products to the masses, if you will. And that just kind of stood out to me a lot in terms of, and it just put into perspective something that I hadn't been able to contextualize of why I'm passionate about this space, because I don't always see as many people who look like me working in this space. And I know that at the end of the day, I'm passionate not just because of the planet, like that's all nice and it makes me feel good, but also because of the people it impacts. And and that passion is gonna make sure is gonna help me work twice as hard to make these solutions happen.
So when you were talking, a couple of things stood out to me. You were sharing how there's a huge gap between knowledge, access to resources, and then um, the sustainability piece, which is being able to pay for it. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you see things changing in those three areas? How is knowledge being infiltrated in the community that needs it the most? And then then we're moving to a place of actually placement and then sustaining.
Yeah, the knowledge piece, I'm still trying to figure out myself. I came across but I think it's a very important. I think people still energy is not something other than when you turn on your light bulb, but everything that happens in the background is not something that people see. Uh, you're not aware like that there's a problem there. I think people just come to expect, okay, I turn on my light bulb and it goes on and that's it. But
Right.
they don't know that in the back there's like a dirty power plant that's creating all these other problems. So then there's that knowledge gap. I came across a study that it was like in California, and there was like lower of Hispanic households for like energy efficiency products. And one of the key pieces it talked about was because of uh, the programs are just not being marketed properly, and also maybe not being properly translated, or maybe translated at all Spanish, so that these communities know that these programs are even available. So, and when it comes to knowledge, I agree that I think it's a problem. As far as the solution goes, it's something that I'm actually in the process of trying to do a little bit more research of. Is there people working to solve this knowledge gap issue?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, like through trainings and like webinars. Like I would love to be able to uh, connect with you as a resource as you're coming across these to be able to share with the community. Because one of the things I think is lacking, and I find this across any type of programming or movement that is how should I say this? Any type of movement that is working to uh, create a greater uh, life or yeah, a greater life for us. I think that it's oftentimes people of color or low income people are at the tail end. We know this, right? And so it requires that kind of advocate that triage that information back to the community and then move the community to come forward to be present at these meetings, whether they're town hall meetings or, you know, identify who your local legislatures are and representatives. And then the other part I think that's really crucial is identifying that there is a need for language as well.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that language that that is available. And I don't mean even how should I say this? I don't even mean language like maybe, you know, you speak Spanish, I don't, right? I'm talking about being able to speak it at the most simplistic level, because oftentimes we
yeah,
use a lot of academic terminology to say something that could just be what, just take all the fluff away from it and just tell me, you know, if you
yes,
want me to
yes.
execute. So I know we talk a lot about making sure that we put it in language of the different languages, which is highly important. And and not but and let's also make sure that the language is not in this academic or just unnecessary high level art, you know,
Yeah,
verbiage that
yeah,
you know, even half the academic people don't know what some of the stuff, who came up with this. So like,
yeah.
you know, when we're talking about knowledge connected to education, like, you know, some of those things I think are so important.
No, that's a great point. And even I sometimes myself, like you said, is I'm still trying to learn kind of what that language is, and wanting to share that in a more
Mm-hmm.
simplistic way. Um, what's it called? One thing. So speaking of one thing that I recently read, so California has let's just say this thing called time of use pricing. Basically, the pricing of your electricity bill depends on the timing of when you're using. So let's just say from, I think San Diego Gas and Electric, from between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. is like the highest demand when most people are using electricity. So that's when it's going to cost the most. So basically they have a new plan that people can call, or I think online, and they should be able to like help see if this makes sense. But if people can avoid or try to reduce how much energy they use from 4 to 9, and instead, even something like charging your phone, charging your laptop outside of those hours can impact. And to that point of the language, another component is, I think people working in the sustainability field, we sometimes the solutions are put in a manner of, oh, do this because it's good for the planet, it's good for the environment. But at the end of the day, I think people sometimes don't always have to care about, you know, something that's going to happen 10, 15 years from now, when you're worried about what's going to happen in a week or two. Like, you know, today was the first, like, am I going to be able to pay rent? Like, at the end of the day, it needs to be communicated. Here are measures or steps you can take that are going to help you save on your electricity bill. You know, so yeah, I think understanding both pieces of the puzzle, like, it is important to care about the environment, but it's also, how do you communicate it so that it incentivizes people to act?
I love what you're saying there. And the other thing I think that stood out to me is taking on that kind of grassroots approach as well, is recognizing that sometimes it is someone doing the leg work and then sharing the knowledge while they're doing it, not waiting till they get all the information all at once and distributing it. So what would you say is like the biggest push? The other question, so we talked about knowledge and then actually getting these sustainable products, renewable products in these communities. So we're talking about how to decrease, you know, these large corporations that have all these, like, so how, you know, how do we combat that so that we are allowing our youth, our families, to be able to grow up in a space where they're not being inundated with tox am I saying that right?
Toxins.
Toxins.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. No, you're
Struggle.
good.
I'm like,
Um,
toxins. What's that?
yeah, I would say, you know, it's not to get too political, but I think,
Yeah,
you know, a lot of us are excited that we have a new administration coming in, and who that is
that's true.
prioritizing some of
Mhm.
these measures, and on top of that, uh, looking at who are going to be the influencers, the decision makers, uh, that are engaged uh, in this transition, right? And so I would say, even for myself, from my 2.5 years that I've been in Michigan in this program, over the last 6 months since uh, the sad and unfortunate passing of George Floyd, while there's been an increased awareness of racism like across the board, that's even uh, happening at this sustainable, or like sustainability environmental movement. Uh, there's been an increased awareness of the, like, how the racism within the like environmental uh, just communities, right? Of how pollutant it is. And so, uh, you know, I would say what's happened over the summer has had implications across the board. And there's more people being aware. And I think both companies at all levels starting to realize that they need to make changes, that they need to start, yeah, just the way they approach the solutions and thinking about the implications, not just for all users, all consumers as well. And I've seen that both from corporations, but also from my classmates who are also getting more engaged.
Yeah, good point. And I Well, it sounds like as we're wrapping up, is the call to action from what Abe is saying is you need to connect with your local representatives. And I'll kind of let you kind of take the lead on that. What would be the call to action for those who are, well, two things. One, for anyone who has a similar interest in the work that you're doing, what would you advise them to do? Someone that is Latino, who is looking, male or female, that's looking to move outside their comfort zone, maybe having that teetering. And then the last part is for those who want to be more proactive in that environmental space, what would be the call to action for them?
Yeah. So with people wanting to come or get outside their comfort zone, um, I feel like it's baby steps. So for me, I had to move away from San Diego to go to Irvine. And then when I was in Irvine, um, I would say predominantly most of my friends were part of like the Latino Hispanic community. But at this point, just living on my own was like a step outside my comfort zone. Um, Moving to Kansas City then was okay, I'm already used to living by myself. And then now I'm stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit more culturally. Um, and I would say I've constantly felt, I don't know if I would have been able to, or if I would have felt as confident coming into Michigan had I not taken these other like intermediate steps. And
Yeah.
so just kind of slowly, and everyone knows how much out of their comfort zone yeah, everyone needs to figure that out. As far as looking at working in the space, just not being afraid. And I think this goes to anyone, especially younger folks trying to either looking at college careers. Just don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask for 15, 20 minutes to talk to someone about their career interest. I do believe it, even for myself, it always is easier when I see someone who is like Latino, Latina. Um, it makes it easier to make that ask, but at the same time, if you don't see someone, like, don't let that scare you away. Um, and then the third piece of people wanting to get more involved, I would say, I think the first step is really just not just, I mean, San Diego Gas and Electric or the utilities across California. Maybe taking some time looking at their website. They have, I would say, energy efficiency programs. So how to help people reduce their energy usage. Uh, they either have programs where they might give people, and I mean, I've seen that at different utilities, but there's always on the website information. They have programs that they can help people, but sometimes they don't, they're not utilized because people just don't know. And so exploring what the options are with the utility, um, they are, at the end of the day, these electric utilities are, they're regulated by the state, and they have to serve the people, right? It's not like a grocery store that you have options to pick from. When it comes to a utility, you really only have one option. So there's mandates that they have to invest certain amount of money into like low to middle income communities. They have to invest a certain amount of money into energy
Good
efficiency, things like
point.
that. So there are resources there to be taken advantage of.
That is such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. There are resources and especially financial resources that are drafted to be able to give back to the community. And your if your community don't understand what's available, then they're just going to sit there and be allocated somewhere else. And
Hmm.
again, we don't want just a small group pushing this forward to hold these people accountable. We want more people to come out. So yeah, definitely reach out to your local representatives, any advocacy groups in your community to learn how you can be involved. You can also, if you're not already connected, I forgot about this, Vote Plus 10 is an online app you can download and join groups. They have an environmental group, and you can actually disseminate information to your specific community, connect to people in your specific community. And actually, one of the app developers is lived in San Diego. Actually, is from, well, North County, but yeah, it's from the greater part of San Diego. That's how you say it. So anyway, Abe,
Yes.
tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, I think probably the easiest would be LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's either Abe Baca or Abraham Baca. One, I always forget which one I put on there. I'm constantly on that, so that's probably the easiest way. And I'm looking forward to like just connecting with people and helping, you know, spread more awareness into this issue. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. And you can also connect to him on We the Plug as well.
Yes.
All his links will be at the bottom of the screen as well. But again, reach out. LinkedIn is one of the best connections if you're just out in the community, and then definitely connect on We the Plug as well. But Abe, I want to thank you for taking out the time. I know you're busy with schoolwork and now the school is winding down. I really do appreciate you taking out time to connect with us and
Yeah.
sharing your insight.
Yeah, no, thank you, Christiana, for having me. And and yeah, LinkedIn is how we connected. And as I mentioned, all my family, you know, is still in San Diego, so I'm always excited to see people from San Diego out there, virtually, you know, attending these conferences.
Absolutely.
And so that was exciting, and excited to see what everyone's building. So I always feel a connection with anyone from San Diego, and so happy to continue giving back to that community.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for tuning in and watching another episode of the Cafecito. We hope you all are doing the best that you can to stay safe. And always, always, always remember, you too are everyday people doing extraordinary things. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.